of Selectmen's meeting. Tonight is July 11th, 2017. If we could all stand and pledge allegiance to our flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. I'll briefly go over tonight's agenda. The board has a public hearing scheduled at 6:05 for KB Holdings on a new alcohol license. We have a Mr. Andrew Bernstein here from Kearsarge Energy who will be addressing the board. And the discussion items.
Take a break for a second. I don't have any sound. We can figure out why. Yeah, that's the one.
Okay. The board will recess until we have sound. There are people that would prefer it this way.
Okay, you said a problem or a benefit?
Well, I'm willing to take the hit. I'm used to it.
Okay, send this. This is your president, so don't forget.
Sure.
It's the financial policies that you approved last week, just for the board.
We're gonna have plenty of paper there. I don't think we've got enough paper.
I didn't realize Sandy was printing sample. I know we don't do that.
I don't read it either.
Talking on paper or something.
Well, you gotta do something with those 130 hours.
And they're now only home that week.
Oh,
Okay, I figured it out.
I thought you meant 30 hours on the clock at home.
Somebody turn the earphones off.
Okay, so we're live now? Okay, I will resume with our agenda this evening. We have a public hearing from KB Holdings LLC on the new alcohol license. We have a Mr. Andrew Bernstein here from Kearsarge Energy who will be making a presentation to the board. After the manager's report, we will be discussing an update in the opiate task force committee. We will have a number of appointments to look at relative to summer Department of Public Works temporary employees, full-time paramedics. We also will be discussing with the town manager a contract extension. As you know, we contracted with a new town manager, and that gentleman will be starting July 31st. We would like a transition plan with Mr. Reed, so we'll be discussing that. We have 3 Milford Street, which is the Design Selection Committee, has some discussion. We will have some discussion on that. We have a review of eligibility for a benefits policy that we need to discuss, and then any new business not anticipated. The board will be going in executive session under Mass General Law, Chapter 21S 1B, Mass General Law, Chapter 4, Section 7, Clause 26C, to discuss financial assistance to a resident in need. At the conclusion of that meeting, the board will reconvene only for purposes of adjournment. We will not taking any other activity. So at this time, it's almost 6:05, but I'll ask, we have a number of minutes to approve, gentlemen, from June 5th, 12th, 14th, 20th, in executive session, May 16th, June 5, and June 14th. At your pleasure, all at once or individually?
You ready, sir?
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion we accept regular session minutes from June 5th, June 12th, June 14th, June 20th, and the executive session minutes from May 16th, June 5th, and June 14th as written.
Second motion.
That's unanimous action of the board. Okay, we've got a few minutes. I have 1 minute to go, and we need to stay within the law. Let's see if there's... Could you just update us on the acoustics policy you do have on this hall, on the main town hall?
Yep.
While we have the minute.
I think the board agreed to include Little Town Hall. We had an estimate from the company, I can't remember the name, Tochi something, but I know that they had worked with the town on the renovation project. I spoke to the town clerk. They came highly recommended, and Cable has graciously offered to pay for the acoustic study. I'm estimating it would be around $3,500. So they had informed me this is a really busy time for them, but they expect to be coming out sometime in July to begin the work. I haven't gotten a proposal for them yet, so I expect that very shortly. I thought I'd have something for the meeting tonight, but don't have it yet. But it's in process, and we expect to be beginning it very soon.
Okay, good. And as most people in town know, it's very difficult to broadcast to have any type of hearing or function in the main town hall, although very attractive acoustically, the sounds are bad, and it's hard to hear people. So we are trying to address that, as well as this room also. Okay, I'd like to open up the hearing. This hearing was duly posted and notified. I'll read the notice. Notice is hereby given under Chapter 138, Section 15A of the Mass General Laws, that the public hearing will be held on Tuesday, July 11, 2017, at 6:05 p.m. at the Upton Town Hall, 1 Main Street, Upton, Mass., on the application of KB Holdings LLC, 25 William Street, Upton, Mass., for an all-alcohol license on the premises of 118 Main Street. The premises is approximately 4,600 square feet of space within the building located at 118 Main Street, Upton, Mass. Before we get into anything, it's the board's understanding that there is a meeting, and correct me if I'm wrong, with the planning board directly after this. I think it's 7.
That's right.
And the board, I think it's in our best interest to leave this hearing open. We will determine, we have a meeting scheduled for August 8th, which we will all agree on, but at that meeting, we will reopen the hearing to address it, but I think it's proper that we allow the planning board to have the site approval and to review the process. That way, when it comes to us, all questions have been answered. And I understand the parties would like to get this through process, but we have to do it the right way and make sure we abide by all the rules and regulations. So at this time, while the hearing's open, do you have any questions?
Not now, sir.
Do you?
None of that yet.
Do you have anything you'd like to ask us before?
Mr. Chairman, is there a specific time that you anticipate?
Be the same time.
Back on the 6th?
6:05.
6:05?
We would reopen it at the start of the meeting. That would be our next duly posted meeting. I shouldn't say that. We may meet in the interim, but it would be very brief for other purposes, yeah. So, okay. I'd first like to ask, is the board in consensus August 8th works for you?
Yes, sir.
Works for you?
Yes, it
So
does.
that will be our next meeting, so we will recess this hearing until August 8th. Thank you.
Well, excuse me, did you want to open the common vic and recess that into hearing?
Good point. Do them both, yep. Okay. Notice hereby given under Chapter 140 of the Mass General Laws, the public hearing will be held on Tuesday, July 11, 2017, at 6:05 p.m. at the Upton Town Hall, 1 Main Street, Upton, Mass., on the application of KB Holdings, LLC, 25 William Street, Upton, Mass., for a common victual license on the premises of 118 Main Street. I will ask that this also be recessed and reconvened at our next meeting of August 8th at 6:05, correct?
Yes.
Okay, that hearing is closed. Thank you. Okay, sorry to have you come out, but I guess you're here anyway. Thank you. If you have any questions in the interim, you can reach the town manager. We try to help you. Okay, next, Mr. Bernstein from Kearsarge Energy. I hope I am pronouncing it correctly. Perfectly. Yes, thank you. This is solar net metered, solar net metered credit purchase opportunity. The board has material on this, but I will turn it over to you at this time.
Sure. So the Massachusetts has had this opportunity for virtual net metered credits. We're towards the end of the program, probably the last few months of it. We have one more project open with credits. We'd like to have the town purchase the credits based on what we've discussed with Robert. The way it works is you would basically get a credit on your bill each month. You would keep 20% of the credit, we'd bill you for 80%. There's no downside, there's no downside to the town, the way the mechanism works, because you wouldn't be buying at a specific price. Whatever the net metered credit rate is, you would get 20% of that. The net metered credit rate right now is 16.96 cents. It's gone up historically at about 3.5% since they started the program. Even with the low natural gas prices, it's continued to go up because of the transmission and distribution piece, which is part of it, which of course National Grid wants to see that keep going up because that's how they make their money. We've looked at with your energy consultant, I guess, Bill.
Bill, excuse me, I mean, Bill, why don't you, Mr. Taylor, Why don't you come up here and join? I'm sorry, I should have asked you at the beginning.
So we've looked at with Bill the town's usage, and we've come up with that we're recommending that the town takes 90% of their approximate total usage, which gives you room for energy-saving mechanisms. The amount of power that's produced by a solar facility actually goes down each year by 0.5%, just as the facility, as the panels degrade over time. So that would provide, that would provide approximately 1.6 million in energy savings to the town over 20 years, with a forecast of where the energy prices might go. There will be some sort of new program, which the Department of Energy Resources has called the SMART program, but the challenge is that the net metering cap, which allows towns to get into this, is full right now. So we've got an allocation in the cap of about 60% of what we need. We're the #1, and as more opens up, we expect to clear the cap in the next few months. But we'll start construction in the fall. The project is based in Uxbridge, and we have a couple other towns and a school district who will buy the remaining amount of power. And Quincy Affordable Housing will take a little bit as well. So that's the very brief summary of the project. I know you've looked at the material. I don't know, we can answer any questions.
Yeah, I'd turn it over to you, Bill, at this time. You're the Green Initiative man.
Yes, so I think, as Mr. Bernstein pointed out, there's really no downside. I guess like the worst case scenario is we wouldn't get any money at all, but there's no out-of-pocket risk.
Right.
Yeah, so that, that's that part of it. I did provide them with our energy use information, which I took directly from the data tracking software that we use for the Green Community Program. And I've audited that. I'm very confident that that information is accurate. The 90% sounds reasonable. I think that'll probably, does that number come down, or the production number comes down?
Right. It'll come down over time. But Kearsarge, I didn't spend much time on our company. We're financially strong. We have over 100 million in assets. We have projects throughout the state. We're continuing to grow. We'll own the project. We don't sell it. We don't seek outside investment. We sell the tax credits, but that's a separate game. But the point is that when you're dealing with Kearsarge, we're here, and all of our projects to date since we started this when the program are either outperforming or on performance levels. So there's not a lot of risk with solar because unlike wind, there's no moving parts, there's no mechanisms. So as Bill said, there's not a lot of downside, and we have references that we provided where we just finished a project in Bellingham, we've done them in Franklin, so we've done them all over the state with National Grid. We have the interconnection agreement with National Grid signed, we've paid the full amount, and they're working on their piece. We expect them to finish their piece sometime in the first quarter of next year.
If I may, I'm a little confused. You're required to issue credits, correct? Who regulates the amount of credits that are issued?
So the way the mechanism works is National Grid will basically put on your bill, you'll pick 4 or 5 of your different school or whatever you want, town hall. National Grid will issue the credits onto your bill based on, they have a meter at the facility. So for example, you'll say, I'm going to take 30% of the output of this facility. We know, we'll guarantee to you in our purchase power agreement what the minimum's going to be. That percentage, so we'll take 30%, will then be applied. You can change it every 6 months, will be applied to your bills based on the output. So if in a month there's 100,000 kilowatt hours that are created, you'd be taking 30,000 kilowatt hours times the credit rate, and then, so you'd get the full credit onto your bill, you'd keep 20%, we'd bill you for 80%. We don't bill you until you get the credit, so you're never out of pocket for money. But National Grid has a meter, and we have a meter, but just to check for the other parts of the incentive. So there's 2 meters, but National Grid puts the credits, so you're seeing the money on your bill. So they're basically regulating it. The nice thing is, let's say it's July or August, and there's a lot more production, you can carry those credits forward.
Okay, yeah. So we bank them.
Yep.
Do you have any questions?
Just 2 questions. What would be the length of the contract, and what is your opt-out clause?
It's a 20-year contract, which is pretty standard, the opt-out clause is basically if we default, don't build the project, and we still have a minimum guaranteed to the town, so, which is about 80% of the output. So the town then could get out if we don't produce, or if there's a change in law so that you can't get the net metered credits, then you can opt out. And the change of law works pretty similar. We agree to try to negotiate, and if we can't come up with something that works for both sides, you're out.
Yes, sir.
Steve?
And I guess my question was, you were talking about the meter, it's metered at your facility and it's metered at National Grid as well?
There's 2 meters at the facility. One is the revenue grade meter, sorry, I'm so hoarse, that National Grid controls. And then we have another meter because they're what are called the solar renewable energy credits that we sell separately, having nothing to do with the town. But we try to make sure they're close, and they're normally close because it's a little bit of a distance, so there's a little bit of degrading in the power. But it's the National Grid's meter that's right on the facility.
Checking output to the grid?
Sorry?
That would be checking the output to the grid, obviously.
Right. So they control it. So you'll never can be billed for more than you're getting because National Grid's putting 100% of the credits through their meter. So we've done 35 PPAs with municipalities throughout the state. It's the standard PPA that we use, and it's the same one we've offered to other towns. I think Bill and Robert were asking us, this sounds too good to be true. What are the gotchas as part of it? And you brought up the most important issue is how can you get out if there's a change of law? So the town is pretty covered, but it was set up to give the benefits because these costs are really being paid by all of us individually in the town because, in the state rather, because they get socialized across. But it's so small, it's a rounding error for National Grid, so we don't even see it. In a state like Rhode Island, you see a little bit more.
Gentlemen, at your pleasure, I personally would like to have more conversation with this gentleman here and get some more input before a 20-year contract. I'd like to be darn sure I know what I'm doing. So are you comfortable with deferring this till August 8th?
Yeah.
And we'll
nice to get a little more information.
We can all reach out to you individually, so we don't break the open meeting law.
Sure.
Just
We do have a timing, we'll go ahead.
We might have covered this when we met, but it doesn't matter who your supplier is or if you have other agreements. I mean, we're part of a constellation through Mass Municipal Association, so that doesn't matter. Bill and I have also talked, and this is something that will be coming later about being part of an aggregation project. We met with Colonial. That doesn't matter either. So these other agreements don't impact the power purchase agreement that we would have with Kearsarge.
You can do whatever you want because you're getting $1 credit on your bill.
What's your timeline? You said there's a timeline?
We're trying to get this done because we need to have it signed up. We have some other, since I first met, we have some other parties. We're oversubscribed, but we offered it to Upton first. So we have some other parties who are interested in it. So I'd like to get an agreement that you'll work on the PPA, have an attorney take a look at it, any questions or things like that. Certainly we can wait 2 weeks.
Are you okay with that request to start process of review from council?
As long as it doesn't lock us into anything.
It'd be nice to really know what, at the end of the day, what are we gonna be saving?
Well,
I think it's.
I can tell you the savings will be 1.6 million over 20 years. And I've got a whole chart,
good.
that savings for each year.
it's just the little nuances,
Yeah.
you know.
Sure. No, that's
To be
fine.
candid, we are probably going to have to post another meeting, a very quick meeting within the next week because of a contractual we have to sign. So if we're satisfied at that time, we could put this on the agenda.
Well, in the meantime, I can contact some other communities. Bellingham, Franklin was mentioned. There are some others that we can contact. And also, if we could have a copy of the power purchase agreement, then that's something. I'm sure there's somebody at K&P who's seen this. They probably represent several of these towns.
Boilerplate to them.
Yeah, no, we've done a lot. I don't know who your attorney is
KP.
at KP Law, but with Dave Donetsky and a couple others. So it's pretty standard. I mean, if we get into, what we want to avoid is starting, if KP Law come in and we start trying to renegotiate the whole thing, it's just not worth it.
No.
But this is the same one that we've signed with all these different towns.
Well, I'm sure they've seen this before.
Yeah. I think what he's saying is, it's so boilerplate.
Yeah.
That we'll just get another town to take a look at it. Council will say, yep, seen these, no problem. And I guess we could make, and I'll speak for the board, but interrupt me if I'm not, we want to go forward with this, we're giving you the
Okay.
go, we want to do one more check and balance before.
Absolutely. That's fair enough. That's not a problem.
Yes.
Okay. So, you can reach out to Bob, and I will definitely reach out to Bill and have, but I think once that's satisfied, and I respect his opinion, and he certainly feels it's a go, that has a lot of weight on it as well, so.
Yep. And we've just signed it for a whole series of towns, but I'll give you a list of references.
Okay.
We've done a whole bunch with Grafton recently, is probably the closest one.
Yeah, so our relationship with Kearsarge was initiated as a result of the former town manager talking to it's a town administrator in Grafton?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's how the relationship got started. I think he spoke to her about it, and then they reached out to us to see if we were interested.
Right, we've signed 6 PPAs with the town of Grafton. And it's going to be basically the same form. It'll be a little bit updated because some things have changed in the law.
It's one of those things, it seems too good to be true, so you gotta check it, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Somebody's giving you something, the free word.
Yep.
Yeah, so,
But you can call Tim McCurney, who's the
nobody's doubting credibility here at all.
They've saved, I mean, they're into the $5 or $6 million over 20 years in Grafton. They've already saved a couple $100,000 to schools alone because they've been doing it for quite a while.
One other quick question for you, looking at the chart that you have provided here, I see the 1.6 million over at year 20, you projected out 30 years, so is there a chance that it's still productive, and are we?
Oh, it will be.
Okay.
But you're not liable for, you sign for, towns can't sign for more than 20 years. So, but after 20 years, we come back and say, hey, do you want to renew it again?
But they have a life expectancy, am I reading it right, then the life expectancy of the particular facility would be 30 years?
At least. The panels are warranted for 20 years. We only use top-tier components. We try to buy as much as we can from this country. Having said that, the panels are all from China. We've already purchased the panels for this project, so we've locked in on that. But you'll do a replacement of the inverter, which converts the DC to the AC. You'll do that after about 10 or 12 years. And that's really the only thing you've got to change. I mean, that's the great thing about this. Maintenance, you send a guy out in a truck once a month to check things, and we can check all these things on our phone because we can see exactly what's producing and what's not producing. They're built to sustain hurricane winds. So you don't have a lot of things, knock on wood, that can go wrong at a solar facility, except you get a month like May when there's not a lot of sun,
Yeah.
but you normally make it up. I mean, last year we made it up as well. So we do forecasts, which are built into the numbers that we guarantee you of how much, what's the maximum could be and what's the minimum. So, and we try to be pretty conservative. We've had no issues with town. The other thing you can do is, let's say, in 5 years or 10 years, something changes dramatically and you become incredibly energy efficient, you could actually go to a different town and have them take over your credits. So every 6 months, you can change what's called the Schedule Z, you can reallocate them, but you can also have another town who has appetite take them over. But that's very seldom happens.
Okay, so what we will do is we will reconvene, we'll bring this subject up again on our August 8th meeting. By then, the town manager will have done the homework. We'll have an opportunity to speak with Bill. It seems like it's a go process, but a little conservatism here before we jump into a 20-year. So, but thank you for coming in. It's always good to hear these things.
Yeah, and want me to come back on August 8th? That's fine.
It's your call. It may be just a vote, gavel, drop
Okay.
by
Great.
then.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for coming in.
All right, appreciate it. Thanks a lot. Good luck, so we want to see you. Okay.
We don't know. You never know. Never say never.
I'm not sure he wants to hear that, but.
Thank you. Time for the manager's report. Bob, turn it over to you.
Well, the first thing that I had was taking care of your summer schedule in your next meeting. We got contacted, spoken to the board about the Brook Street water project. DPW went out to bid for that project, and the bids came in much higher than what was budgeted. The town appropriation was $235,000, and the bid came in at $356,000. I spoke to Mr. Roy about it, and he has offered to have that work done by the Department of Public Works, by the Highway Department, to work on that water line project. All he would need to do...
Thank you. All we would need to do is to hire an excavator. Feedback that I've gotten is that, this was something the board would, hope the Department of Public Works would do, is take on projects like this. With the Highway Department, the DPW taking this on would certainly save a lot of money over the bid price, which was, as I mentioned, $356,000. The net savings even over the appropriation, he's estimating, would be over $12,000. So we'll be saving the town 6 figures over the bid amount. This also pertains a little bit to something later in your agenda about the summer help. I might as well mention it now. I mean, typically, the Highway Department or the DPW looks for 3 summer workers. He's already got 2 started. He's looking for 2 more. So I think this would be justified between the extra work that's going to be done by his department with the Brook Street project. The summer help can do some of the tasks that would ordinarily be done that won't be done because of Brook Street. And also, there is an employee in the water department that is going to be out, has been out, will be out for at least another month and a half. So I think that justifies the 2 additional workers. But Mr. Roy has also forwarded to me a contract for the excavator, an on-call excavator. He's estimating that the total cost for the excavation on the Brook Street project would be about $60,000. So this is above and beyond. Well, that's all included in the total cost, $222,000. Still a savings, a great savings over the bid amount and the appropriation. So I would ask the board's approval for the excavator contract, to sign the excavator contract.
Okay, we have before us an offer, or contract proposal for $60,000. The excavator, again, we're over 6 figures in the savings, so this makes sense, but where it's over the amount to authorize town manager to execute that contract, I assume he's done done due diligence.
Let me just ask a quick question. That would be an outside contractor that would come in and actually do the excavation, not...
Correct.
Okay. Not leasing a piece of equipment? Yeah.
Gentlemen, any questions?
Yes, sir.
We have a motion to authorize town manager to enter in the...
I'm sorry, it's an excavator with operator.
Okay.
Yeah.
To enter in the contract for $60,000 for an excavator with a contractor, with an operator, for the purpose of the Brook Street reconstruction.
I'll second it.
Yes.
It's unanimous.
Yeah.
So, Bob, go for it, as they say. You keeping that?
It looks like there's copies for everybody. Is that right, a copy for everybody?
If there's an extra one, yeah, I can have that.
I don't believe it's the same. I thought it peaked.
We've covered the acoustic study. We have some additional developments on Kiwanis and the transition plan. You know, I've discussed with the board about a grant program that's available through the Mass Office on Disabilities, and we were looking to apply for that program to get about half the money at least to do the transition plan, and then we would know what the total cost would be to bring Kiwanis compliant with the ADA and also townwide. Mass Office on Disabilities has finally put on their website their schedule. They're not accepting applications until August. I wrote to them and asked them then under this new schedule that they've announced for FY18 when they expected to make grant awards. They're not expecting to make grant awards until January. I had thought they were on a rolling basis, but they're not. They're on a competitive basis. Obviously, that wouldn't allow to have any cost estimates or to bring anything before the fall town meeting, which in turn would probably mean that that lot, the upper lot at Kiwanis, would not be available for another season. So then the thought was, well, why not break out Kiwanis in the transition plan and see whether or not the Center for Living and Working that I've been dealing with that gave me the cost estimate for the transition plan could just break out Kiwanis and just do that so we could move forward. They're able to do that. I've gotten information on Kiwanis, which we've sent them. Andrew, the recreation director, has sent me the layout of Kiwanis and all the facilities there, so I'm expecting very shortly to get an estimate, which I think will be probably in the $3,000 range to do just the Kiwanis facility, and then we can discuss and the board can decide how it wants to handle the transition plan, whether it even wants to wait for the Mass Office on Disabilities given their schedule. Now, I had attended a meeting of the Recreation Commission a couple of weeks ago, and at that point, the Recreation Commission had very generously offered to help pay for some of the work that was being done at Kiwanis, specifically the handrails that have been recently installed by Department of Public Works. Department of Public Works did that work and is not billing the Recreation Commission for that. So I've talked to the Recreation Commission about then using that money to fund the transition plan for Kiwanis. So I think with that money, then we'd be able to move forward and at least have the transition plan done. And as I said, I think we can talk about the rest of the town for the fall town meeting. Maybe that could be an article at the fall town meeting to fund the rest of the transition plan, the town-wide transition plan, which really needs to be done in the fall. I think that's a very good price from the Center for Living and Working in Worcester on doing that. So I'll keep the board informed when I get that number, but I think we'll be ready to go in short order on a transition plan. Then we'll know what the total nut is going to be, the total cost is going to be for Kiwanis, and have something to bring forward. Honestly, I don't think, I'm sure there's going to be more than just the walkway coming down from the upper lot, but I think the key is the town showing good faith. I think if at least you move forward with having the walkway done, then that will be showing good faith. And then, as again, the town can decide what it wants to do with the rest of the facilities at Kiwanis and whatever is found in the transition plan. One other piece of news, you've probably seen that there have been local aid figures that have been announced. Conference committee local aid figures have come out. For Chapter 70 and for what's called the unrestricted government aid, these numbers are the same as we took to town meeting. They haven't changed in the conference committee. But one thing that's been added, and I was contacted by Representative Maradian's office, is it was initially called public safety, but there's a $27,000 line item in the conference committee budget that our representative put in the conference committee budget for Kiwanis. Because when we were contacted some months ago about, well, does the town have any wishes, desires, I mentioned Kiwanis and the issue then. I think that's when Kiwanis was first starting to come up and the issues there. So granted, it's a big if, but if it survives the conference committee, if it survives the governor, and remains in the state budget, then there's an additional $27,000, and I think that can be used for just about anything as long as it's Americans with Disabilities Act related at Kiwanis. So that would go a long way towards funding the ramp or whatever the town decides on funding down there. You've got other issues. I'm sure the transition plan is going to find other issues with Kiwanis. But so I wanted to make the board aware that at least in the conference committee budget, that money still has a pulse. We also participated in any questions on that? No. We participated in a fuel bid. I think we had diesel and heating oil through CMRPC. I thought we'd have the bid results by yesterday, but we should be getting that soon. So we participated in the CMRPC cooperative bid for fuel. The chairman mentioned that Derek will be starting the 31st. We can talk about, how many days of overlap we can have when Derek begins. We had received a request from a resident butter property owner on Kiwanis Beach Road for the acceptance of that road. It's been suggested perhaps we'll get in touch with the residents on that road and see how the rest of the people feel. I think the people who had contacted the Selectmen's office are very interested in moving forward with that. They're already talking about having hearings. I had received the report from the Highway Department that although it's not 100% according to their ratings, the road is in fairly good shape. If I haven't, I'll share that report with the...
We have
you have it? Okay.
yeah.
I forget what I sent you at this point, or Sandy sent you. I think that the residents would at least be funding a road layout, a layout plan, if you're going to begin to have a layout hearing, and then decide what other improvements might be necessary before the town accepts it. As you may know, the town's already doing some maintenance there, it does plowing. I'll look into that a little bit more.
On behalf of the board, I'd request that we notify the residents by mail and make it clear to them that the town is looking at requests to possibly accept the roadway, and the conditions of the town accepting it are, and that would include the survey costs and other things being borne by the residents, because to your point, the residents are going to have direct benefit from this, and they should incur some of the responsibility of how this is handled. So if we could send them so that everyone is on that, to use the term, on the same page.
Okay.
And because there's no way we can go to any town meeting or any activity or any hearings until we know if the residents are supportive. If we get 90% of residents saying no, we've got a problem. So
yes,
that would be the only thing I'd see. Gentlemen, anything on that?
The only other thing I was thinking as we move forward, perhaps easements for sidewalks. Whether or not we choose to install them at this point is one thing, but it may be helpful to have that moving forward if and when we ever, choose to rebuild the road.
okay.
So I was thinking that may be something, again, if we're gonna ask the residents for a survey, and obviously there's gonna be costs with registry of deeds and whatnot,
Yeah.
it may be a good time to seek those easements.
Okay. I can go down there with Mr. Roy and just see what the layout is. I'm suspecting, though, that if we did that and we looked at sidewalks, then there might be some takings. You'd be going onto people's property, so.
Well, town normally has a legal easement off a roadway anyway that we accept, and I'm sure the planning board would have some input on the acceptance of this as well,
Okay.
so. But start the process, at least communication with the residents. Okay.
Well, the planning board's meeting tonight, I've asked them to look at a couple of things on their agenda. One is and it's handled through zoning in some communities. I think I've discussed this with the board, is unregistered vehicles. So they're looking at that. And also there was a letter that came out from National Grid about wording for letters to go to National Grid about the town accepting not just the road but streetlights when subdivision is accepted. And I've asked the planning board whether they would consider having something in their subdivision regulations where the owners of the property would maintain responsibility for streetlights, rather than the town accepting it.
Okay.
So that's another thing that they're going to be looking at. And that design selection, I think you have, I'll just explain that a little bit. I think that committee is making great progress, but you may need a special meeting there, and one thing that you'll have to do when it comes time, and I know they're anxious to move forward on a contract, is that committee will be abolished, the design selection committee. I'm assuming the same people who are on the design selection committee would want to move forward with a building, whatever the board comes up with, the feasibility. So then a new committee would be created at that time.
For the board's clarification or information, I spoke to the chair of that committee relative to direction, and there are a number of things right now they need to get that contract done, so we may have to meet one night next week and get that contract done for only that purpose, so they can start. October's not that far away, so they need to be going, and that's all I can say at this point. We have more conversation to have on that issue. It's on our agenda here to discuss, but...
Okay. That's all I have.
Okay, thanks. One of the things that's on our agenda is the update in the opiate task force, and we had all received a memorandum or memo from some of the membership, and what's happened is the membership, I believe, is 9 or 11 members. It's 9. It's too cumbersome. They find that the attendance is sporadic because of the large numbers, and their recommendation is to reduce the membership. So, respecting their request on behalf of the board, I would ask that anybody that's on the opiate task force committee that wants to stay on, and this is a reverse approach, please let us know that you do not want to be to be removed is a bad term, but to not be, to not be a member of that committee, and it's no slight on anyone. I'm a member, Gary's a member, I don't think you are at this point. I haven't been to a meeting in months because they meet at all different times. I just can't make it. So they need to consolidate the membership to get a better action plan, and that's what it's about. So I would ask if we just announce tonight that we are considering reducing the membership, and that anyone that wants to be retained as a member, please let us know, so we will be sure not to take any action against them. Other than that, we will reduce it, and I certainly will remove my name. So, okay? Anything beyond that? No? Okay. We have some summer appointments which town manager had mentioned. We have a letter from DPW director. There are 2 applicants, which are 2 recommended appointments which he has. Anthony Dwayne Roy, and if I can get the other gentleman's name, Anthony Roy, and where's the other applicant? Here it is, yeah. And both of those gentlemen are being recommended heartily. For clarification, it is also publicly disclosed by Mr. Roy that one of the applicants is his nephew, will not be working under his authority, will be working in the water sewer under the water sewer division, and not supervised by another individual, and will not have contact. Yes.
You're right. Mr. Roy has filed a disclosure with me, and he's also filed a disclosure with the town clerk.
Right. If I wasn't clear on that, yes. So he's made that disclosure. So we do have the 2 applicants here. Gentlemen, I open it up for discussion.
I have nothing.
Gary?
Nothing, sir.
I have none.
Okay, are you willing to make a motion then?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion, we appoint Jack Scribner and Anthony Roy to summer laborers for a term expiring. I'm not sure how long they usually work for.
Second the motion.
Till the time to be determined. That's unanimous action on the board, thanks.
I don't see anything.
We know it won't be beyond September for sure. We also have a request for 2 members, paramedics. It's at the board's, this time the board is going to request that we hold off on reviewing these appointments for clarification purposes. Again, we don't want to make decisions without going due process. So it was requested, and I as chair have accepted the request to hold off on these appointments until August 8th. Is that okay?
Yes, sir.
August 8th?
Yes.
Okay, so we will defer these till the August 8th meeting for the fire EMS paramedic. Okay, the interim town manager, I hate to use the word interim because he is town manager until such time as he isn't, but the very nice gentleman I left with the blue shirt and the red tie will be leaving us at the end of July, and as anyone knows, any transition of new management coming in versus old you need a transition plan. So I would ask the question first, if I may, having been town manager and having better background than any of us would, what would be a normal transitionary time that you would be on beyond your existing contract?
Well, it wouldn't be more than a week. I mean, I was thinking 2 or 3 days. And then, of course, I mean, that's about the amount of time I had with Blythe before because Derek is going to be not interim, but actually, full-time town manager. But I would think 2 or 3 days would be enough. And then, then Derek understands I would be available if he anytime he could call me, anytime he could email. Anything that I can answer that Sandy can't, which probably wouldn't be very much. But, I'd be available. But anyway, to answer your question, I think a week would be plenty.
So what if we motioned a week at the discretion of the new town manager?
Yeah,
Leave it to his discretion.
2 or 3 days, yeah.
Gentlemen, you in agreement?
Sounds good. So kind of your regular work schedule, you're thinking that period of
Yes.
time?
Yeah.
Okay.
So
Do you want an actual physical date for him to be done, like August?
I would just say
August 4th or August?
August 4th is the Friday. Yeah.
Okay.
And please motion in there that he has to work that, no. That would be cruel. That might be a golf day. Okay, please, Gary.
Let's see. Mr. Chairman, I make a motion, we extend Mr. Reed's contract until August 4th.
Second the motion?
That's unanimous. Thank you, Bob. Next on our agenda, the Design Selection Committee. You had discussed it. We had a email that was sent to the board and a copy to, obviously, the town manager relative to questions and issues of concern in respect to direction as to how they should proceed. At this point, they will work to close in the contract. Our situation is once, and let me try and make it as basic as possible, if this committee finds that the building itself is structurally sound, they have met the obligation of what they were to do, to find out the usage and the quality of the building. The second step would be to then re-motion to appoint them to a feasibility committee for usage purposes. So there are 2 different issues here. Right now, they are in the structural, is the building structurally sound and does it have capabilities of meeting needs for the town? And that's where they're at this point. So we will proceed in the next one once we know how issue number 1 comes up. Am I correct? Anything, gentlemen?
That sounds good.
I have nothing.
Bob, correct?
Well, I think that you would change, once you sign the contract with the design firm, then that committee would be abolished. I think that's really their task, and then the new committee would take over.
That's fair. Yep, that's fair. Because the design firm's doing that work, not them. Right. Okay. So, again, this will come up on our August 8th to be discussed. Appoint building committee, that doesn't make sense at this point. It's premature.
Right.
We had a request for eligibility of benefits policy, and we believe we found a way to address this issue in fairness to all. So we cannot at this time go forward and make a statement, but it is believed that the applicant or the person addressing this issue, we will have resolution for them. I was with the town manager today. We spoke to town council. We've done a number of weeks of research on this, and I think we will satisfy all parties. Is that fair to say?
It's fair, yes, being reviewed by council.
So we will know within, hopefully, a few days, and by our next meeting, we will be able to take action. So that should cover that. Another thing, and it's not on the agenda, I had sent the board a draft of a job description for the town clerk. One of the things that's come up in discussion, and I asked for input, and we still want that. We're going to have a new town manager coming in within 3 weeks, and I think it's fair that that individual has some input. I won't put words in anybody's mouth, but it's my understanding this individual is amenable to having a town clerk's job description reinforced and strengthened to assist, because the process is town government. Who could say it better than the gentleman on my left? A town manager's workload is very substantial, and there are portions of the job that could be handled by someone else and alleviate to spend more time on the research, on the contracts, the bids, and all the other things that are required. Is that a fair statement?
Yes, I talked to Kelly about, we've already changed some responsibilities. We had a company that helped manage facilities. It was really, I'm sure they did a good job, but I think after a time, we kind of viewed them as middlemen, and Kelly has accepted that responsibility. She's been a help to me on the budget and the year-end transition, so, she's already begun accepting some responsibility, and I think particularly with buildings and facilities, should be very good, so, and I've talked to Derek about it also, and as you say, he's very amenable to it.
Yeah, and what would be required is once that Derek is on board, let's call him by his name, we would then go through the personnel board processes of readdressing a job description and the compensation levels and everything else that's entailed. So that's a work in progress. Hopefully, if any changes are required for compensation, we'll have those by October, and we should be able to act on it then. Gentlemen, I've covered everything I've got on my list of discussion items. I did meet with the town manager today and went over a number of updates. We only have one other. We need to address a Class 2 license, which we will probably be bringing up at our next meeting. There is an individual we awarded a Class 2 license, and there seems to be a non-compliance issue, and that needs to be addressed, so due notice will be served. And we are working with the police department to ensure that all class license holders are in compliance, and this is a case that needs to be addressed. So town manager is going to handle it. We don't need to go further on it, but between the chief of police, town manager, I believe it will be satisfied and come back to this board for any action that's to be taken. Got it?
Yes.
Okay. That's all I have. Gentlemen, anything? Gary? Steve?
Nothing.
Bob?
I'm all set.
Anybody in the audience? No, okay. Then the board will be going in executive session under Mass General Law, Chapter 214, Section 1B, and Mass General Law C4, S7, Clause 26C to discuss financial assistance to a resident in need. Thank you. The board will recess, will adjourn, will reconvene only for purpose of adjournment.